Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video, and this is another paid request. This time for Jonathan. Thank you so much for that. For those interested in requesting any type of videos, random thoughts, streams, commentaries, video game playthrough, tier list, ranking, whatever the case, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal, do have a CashApp as well. Links are down below in the info box, and I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. For those who sent them, thank you. I do appreciate it. And this is for Air Force One. So take that movie G20, which I forgot I saw this year, but what if that was a good movie? You have this, where the president has to go fight the bad guys. Only I buy Harrison Ford in 1997 than that girl. It also helps you have a pretty decent director in Wolfgang Petersen, who did In the Line of Fire before this, and then also did Outbreak before this. Two films I liked. In the Line of Fire, it's one of my favorite Clint Eastwood films. John Malkovich is wonderful in that. And Outbreak has my favorite Dustin Hoffman performance. We're in deep fucking shit. We're already in deep fucking shit. Morgan Freeman, Cuba Gooding Jr., Rene Russo, Donald Sutherland. I think it's a very solid film. So, but Air Force One, box office hit. Very patriotic score. A little bit, 2 hours, but moves at a good pace. And what a great cast. Yeah, Harrison Ford as one of the best movie presidents of all time. Up there with Bill Pullman, Independence Day. But this is probably the most badass president in a movie. You got Gary Oldman, who's wonderful at being a villain. Because you have a good hero, you have a good villain. That's missing from a lot of films today. And there's some films I like that still miss that. But man, if you get that good hero and good villain, you got Stallone and... Well, oh my God, I can't believe... It was right at the tip of my head. Come on. John Lithgow. You got Stallone, John Lithgow, and Cliffhanger. You got Mel Gibson, Vernon Wells, and The Road Warrior. You got Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman. Die Hard. It is great to have that great hero and great villain. And Gary Oldman, he's steely-eyed, he's cold-blooded, but he's also got emotion, and he's ready to kill whoever, whenever, and he's committed to his cause. Other people in the film, you got Glenn Close, you got Dean Stockwell. They're almost at the Pentagon down below assessing the situation. You also have, and Glenn Close, good actress. Dean Stockwell, always been a fan of his ever since Quantum Leap, the original Quantum. I'm a fan of the original Quantum Leap with Scott Bakula. I quite like that show. But also there's J.A. Preston, who plays his general. And I'm like, I know this guy looks familiar. I'm like, that's what it is. He was in Remo Williams. He was the guy who sets up Remo Williams' identity. Oh, what was he talks about like the 11th commandment and about, I forget the exact line, but he was really good in Remo Williams. I'm like, that's where I remember him from. Of the bad guys, there's people like Andrew Divoff, which I forgot he was in this. He doesn't have a whole lot to do, sadly. But I'm looking at it like, wait a minute, is that who it is? Oh shit, it's Andrew Divoff from... He was the bad guy in Toy Soldiers. He was the Wishmaster. I'm like, I forgot he was in this. William H. Macy is one of the people on the plane. Xander Berkeley, who was in the first Candyman. He was the guy in Shanghai Noon who Owen Wilson gets into the gunfight in the church at the end. Oh my God, he's going to kill you. I like Shanghai Noon, Owen Wilson, and then the other guy, the bad guy, is Xander Berkeley. You see him in tons of stuff. He's a secret agent. He's a Secret Service agent, but you find out he's a mole working with the bad guys. And you find this on early on, so it's not too much of a spoiler for a film from 1997. Also, it might not mean much, but there's a bit where Harrison Ford he's trying to dump the fuel so the plane comes down. Because the idea is really die hard on a plane, and the plane's Air Force One. What if Harrison Ford, him and the U.S. are working with Russia, which is ironic, which is kind of funny now that the U.S. is working with Russia, and then we see how we're almost back to the days of the Cold War nowadays with how our ties are with Russia. So it's interesting to watch this and see how close the U.S. and Russia are to get this dictator and capture. That's the first scene, is this team killing some bad guys and capturing this dictator, played by Jürgen Prochnow, who's the bad guy in Beverly Hills Cop 2. He was in Das Boot. He's been in other stuff. Michael Mann's The Keep. And so after that, and atrocity and terror are not political weapons, and we're not going to hold back. Eventually, Gary Oldman and his crew sneaked onto the plane with the help of Xander Berkeley as his cleaning crew. Eventually, they take over the plane. They have hostages. They want the dictator out, and then they think Harrison Ford went on to this. How do I put it? This escape pod, like Escape from New York, which I know they say there's not an escape pod, but why would they admit that if there was? You know what I mean? I mean, there may not be there, probably not, but I'm just saying, even if there isn't, don't admit it. You're just saying, maybe, maybe not. That could be the answer. But anyway, Harrison Ford, he stays on because his wife and daughter are on there, and he's gonna kick some ass, baby. Gonna kick some terrorist ass. But I was saying there's a bit where he's got to dump this fuel, and he calls the mechanic. I'm looking at this mechanic, I'm going, I know this mechanic looks familiar. It's Brian Libby. For those who don't know, he's the unstoppable killer in Chuck Norris's Silent Rage. I'm like, I knew he looked familiar. So, I was ready for him to go, President, I'm losing it. Mr. President, I'm losing it. Then he goes crazy, kills all the mechanics, and then Chuck Norris is the other secret agent. He's Walker, Texas Ranger. He's there to see the president when he lands, and he decides to go fight Brian Libby. That'd be a whole different subplot. But I mean, it pretty much did already tell what the story was. And Harrison Ford definitely was perfect casting, because you need someone that you could buy in the action, but you'd also buy as a man of power. So say if you got like Bruce Willis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, maybe some people would be unsure of them being presidents. If you have like Tom Hanks, it's like, okay, well, I don't know if I'd buy him in the action front. Like, Harrison Ford seemed to be the right choice for this type of movie. And this is around the time when, The Fugitive was a few years before. He would do 6 Days, 7 Nights after this, which I actually liked that movie. I think What Lies Beneath, around 2000, which I've never been a fan of that movie, but that was a big hit. What was that film he did? The Devil's Own. I could never get into that film with him and Brad Pitt. The Devil's Own. I could never get into that. But this, it's a nice crowd pleaser. I mean, I gotta give all the credit to the musical score by Jerry Goldsmith. Because there was another composer, I forget who it was. It wasn't Randy Newman, was it? Yes, it was. Okay. I listened to that score because it did get released. What a horrible fucking score that was. The way Randy Newman scored it felt like it belonged in Hot Shots. If that score was in this, it would have hurt the film a lot. Jerry Goldsmith on it, which I love Jerry Goldsmith. He's probably my favorite composer. Rest in peace. I would say John Carpenter, but Jerry Goldsmith, I mean, he did the first three Rambo films. He did films like Leviathan with Peter Weller, Tom Selleck's film Runaway, Star Trek the Motion Picture, Alien. So many films I love. And just so many scores I really enjoy. Even like Teen Solomon's Mines, him doing his version of Indiana Jones. Supergirl doing his own version of Superman. Just so many scores he knocked out of the park. And this is so... I know... I think Donald Trump used some of this music for his campaign. God, I mean, that's good taste. I mean, I gotta say... However you feel about Donald Trump, I'm not going to get into it. But I mean, I like Bloodsport, I like McDonald's, and I like this music. So that's at least three things I have in common with him. So there you go. And this is a good choice because it's so patriotic in a good way. Like the way the music swells. Da-dun-dun-dun, da-dun-dun-dun, da-dun-dun-dun. Ba, da, 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 da. Like, if this doesn't make you run a marathon, think you don't bleed red, white, and blue out of your sockets, like you get cut, red, white, and blue is just coating on the ground, all over you. Man, it's just like, America, fuck you. Yeah, that reaction from the store. So good in this movie. Spoilers, like when he kills Gary Oldman with the parachute and the body flies away and then he gets up and the music swells, it's just satisfying as a viewer. Like, yeah, get him, Harrison, get him, get off my plane. That's fucking badass. They don't do that nowadays. I can't think of the last action film I've seen that's something that's badass as get off my plane, break the net, fuck off my plane, the music swells. Action films, there are some action films I like. I didn't mind Novocaine, stuff like that, but like that reaction is missing from movies today. What the fuck? Because you don't have your Wolfgang Petersens, you don't have your Jerry Goldsmiths, you don't have your prime, your Harrison Fords. You don't have that nowadays, that kind of thing. When Harrison Ford gets on the action, it makes it believable. So he'll like struggle, get beaten up, and he'll like hit a guy with a chair. He gets in a fist fight with Andrew Divoff. Eventually, you'll break in his neck. Well, not like this, but break this. Some nice shootouts. He takes him out with a machine gun. Now, I don't know if the film needed to be 2 hours long. So sometimes, like, we go back to the people on the ground and... Like, there's this whole thing with Dean Stockwell trying to get this thing signed, that he had power to Glenn Close, his character, in case something happens with the president. I didn't give a shit about any of that, because I'm thinking, we all know Harrison Ford won't get their ass, so this is all pointless anyway. And it just felt like filler. I don't think it was needed. I don't think it brought anything interesting to the table. Just, all this discussion didn't result in anything. Didn't result in any tension. Didn't result in, oh, we made a mistake. Is there a way to backtrack? Like, nothing really came of it. It just felt like filler. Like, okay, we got Dean Stockwell, great actor. We got to give him something to do. I just didn't care about that. So it's kind of like in Under Siege, where sometimes it goes back to the Pentagon and those guys are talking and giving exposition. I'm like, okay, but it's not. When we go, okay, in Under Siege, when we're off the battleship, that stuff is the less interesting stuff to me. Same with this, when we're off the plane and we're with the Glenn Close of them, it's not as interesting to me. I will admit, there are times I'm like, kind of want to hit the fast forward button. That's just how I feel. I think Die Hard did that well, where it didn't really leave the building too much, and when it does, like you have Sergeant Al Powell, that's a very interesting character, and the reason he's built up is that him and John is like his one source of comfort and camaraderie and support, and so that becomes essential to the story and the characters, especially with how Sergeant Al Powell gets the gun and shoots the guy, saving Bruce Willis. And the arc of he never pulls a gun out until now. Like, that works. I think Die Hard did that very well. I don't think every Die Hard type of movie does that well. I think Under Siege and Air Force One, a little less so. But, I mean, they're not egregious or horrible or anything either. You got good actors, and you know they're given exposition and what they can. I'm definitely fine with like Harrison Ford talking with them and such, discussing planes of action. That stuff's perfectly fine with me. And Harrison Ford, good actor. There's a bit where this hostage is ready to get killed, and he doesn't know what to do. He knows if he does there, it's game over. He hears the gunshot, and you see this emotion on his face, where he's like teary-eyed, and then you get this like moment where he's like ready to tear house, like, but then they close the door. It's like if they didn't close the door, he was going to be like the Doomslayer, just like you just tell like how pissed he was. Like, that's a good actor, good emotion. Why is it that like some of these movies that people do with like the like G20, being a stoic, that doesn't always work. Learn from films like this and Die Hard and John McClane and how they acted, where you show a bit of their vulnerability and they're unsure and they're teary-eyed and they're pissed off. They don't have to be driving Batman. They don't have to be doing that either. There's always that balance. Like, people forget there's a balance, but they gotta go one or overcorrect the other. Goddamn. I forget the one actor who's with the bad guys. He was the guy who was, I think, Peter Parker's... the guy he had to pay rent to in Spider-Man. I know there's like a meme with him like Spider-Man 3, but I don't like Spider-Man 3. That's why I pay as little attention as possible. I think it was Spider-Man 3, about paying the rent. He's in here as the bad guy piloting the plane. But I like the look of Air Force One. This, I'll tell you one thing. While I do think the film's maybe a tad long, it's still way better paced compared to Executive Decision. I mentioned that because that film came out, I think, the year or so before this. And hey, you got Kurt Russell, you got Steven Seagal, you got John Leguizamo, you got... And that film was fucking boring. That film somehow took Kurt Russell and Steven Seagal, put them in the same film. Seagal in his heyday, Kurt Russell, you know, after Tango and Cash and Steve New York and Stargate, and you made a boring as fuck film somehow. This is way better. Passenger 57 I liked. That's definitely a shorter film, because I think that's like 80, 90 minutes. But I'd probably say I like this more. I like Passenger 57. I probably like this more just because of... I like Bruce Payne, but Gary Oldman, I felt he was even more dangerous in feel. And I like Wesley Snipes by Harrison Ford. Just the idea he's the president, and I thought there's a little bit more sophistication in the direction of the film. Like I said, it's cool to see William H. Macy in there. I always liked him as an actor. I like the little shootouts. This is one shot I like, and I remember being confused at first, but I'm like, oh, that's actually a good directorial choice. There's a bit of a shootout where we're like very far away, and we see like Harrison Ford's character like way back here. Like, imagine a corridor, the camera's shooting way down, and I'm like, why do they have Harrison Ford's character back here in silhouette? I'm like, oh, we have to tell the audience, how come the bad guys, when they're shooting at him, don't recognize it's the president? Because if they recognize it's the president, then they wouldn't try to shoot him, or they would threaten the wife, and like, you come out here or we'll kill your wife and kid. So if they see that, why aren't they doing it? Oh, this is their point of view. This is what they see. They just see a guy shooting a gun and they can't see his face. Now that I see that, I wasn't even thinking about that, but I'm like, oh, okay, well, that way someone goes, well, how come? Well, there you go. That shot tells you what they're seeing during this gunfight. This is what they're seeing. This is what their viewpoint was. Not many films would do that. But I'm like, okay, I think that's the reason that shot's in there. I appreciate that detail. Trust me, a lot of films don't have that kind of detail. So, I appreciate that. Yes, it's escapism. It's not a documentary. But I still like when people do that. I like the idea that one of the things to save the day is the fax machine. Just because, like, you never think of, like, no one ever thinks of a fax machine. Even nowadays, I don't even know. That'd be a question. Does anyone ever still use a fax machine? I guess you would have no need to, because you just email it. You know, if there's a document, you put it digital, you email it, you know, things of that nature. But I don't know, I just always wonder. Well, not always, just now, wondering, does anyone? Well, I guess the other person would have to have a fax machine. 1997, that was much more common. Nowadays, I wonder if someone go, what the fuck is a fax machine? So some may say that dates the film, but I don't know. So I actually like it. Seeing a bit of that old technology being used. Which, again, at the time wasn't old, but God. I just realized 97... 2007, 2017. In a couple years, it's going to be 30 years old. Jesus. Because we're 2025. Yeah, 2020. Wow. I can't believe this film's almost 30 years old. I feel fucking old. God damn. I didn't see this in the theater, but I remember seeing this on home video. And then having the DVD. It still doesn't have like a great Blu-ray. I mean, it is. I think it's on Blu-ray, but it's not like a, you know, why this doesn't have like special features, making ofs. You think the people would talk about the film, because it seemed like people would be proud of the film. It was a hit. I know people like me, you know, a lot of people liked the film. But anyway. But spoilers, they're able to. He dumps the fuel, they find out, they're able to parachute the hostages out. There's this bit where there's a refueling plane. They got it so low that people could parachute down. The bad guys find out. They shoot. There's a bit of a ruckus. The planes have to go apart. There's a bit of a razzle-dazzle, and the refueling plane blows up, and that's where you get that shot where one plane's here and the other plane's there, and you have this big explosion, which I thought looked cool. It still looked pretty cool, because I think they try to use old school stuff when they can. Once in a while, there's CG. What I think about is when Air Force One finally crashes at the end, that's some really dodgy shit. But before I get to that, I like the scene where Ford and Oldman get their toe to toe. Because you just have these two great actors going back and forth about their ideals. Call, make the call. No. And then, of course, they're going to throw in his family, and you see how emotional Harrison Ford gets. Doing some really good acting. And again, like, sometimes it's not, wall-to-wall action. It's not John Wick or anything. But when it works, it should be satisfying. So when Harrison Ford does his thing and flips, Gary Oldman, gets a guy, turns the machine, shooting people in the head. Sometimes it's just fucking satisfying, And the music, Jerry Goldsmith knows how to handle action because he did First Blood and Rambo 2, Rambo 3, stuff like that. And I forgot, like, I wouldn't say early, but there's still a chunk of the movie left when Gary Oldman dies. And I almost forgot about that because you kind of think, the bad guy's dead, the movie's over. But no, there's still I'm not going to say like an hour left, no. But there's still a chunk because you have the whole bit with the mid-fighters. Maybe they felt that if they just ended with Gary Oldman, that the movie would not... part of me wonders what would have been if they ended with Gary Oldman and then now it's time to get off the plane and that's when Harrison Ford deals with the mole. They thought like the fighter planes, it would give like another action set piece that's a different action set piece and make it like a bigger scale. So you have like the bit where the pilot sacrifices his life to take the hit for Air Force One. And, just to give more... I guess maybe it's like a way to give a bit more spectacle to the third act, which I don't mind. I didn't mind that stuff. But funny enough, it's like the stuff I forgot about. Because I remember the stuff with Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman, but I forgot all about the mid-fighter stuff at the end. After all that's said and done, they get the idea to go from one to the other, from one place to the other. And, of course, you got to deal with the mole. And the mole, shoots William H. Macy. Sad that his character gets killed. I forgot about that. I went, oh, man, that sucks. Because I like William H. Macy. But then Harrison Ford got to kick one more ass, and it's Xander Berkeley. Able to hook in, get the hell out. Xander's there for the plane to crash, and that crash looks really fucking bad. It's the worst effect in the movie, and its sad is one of the last effects in the movie. So you kind of see it here, and when it topples like this, it looks rough. Not the dog, but like rough, like... It does not look the best. I don't know if that looked good at the time. Definitely doesn't now. But, it is what it is. But yeah, what did this film have that made it work? You had a good hero, Harrison Ford. You had a good bad guy, Gary Oldman. You had solid support work, William H. Macy, and Glenn Close, and Dane Stockwell, and all these people. You had a rousing, adrenaline-pumping, patriotic score, Jerry Goldsmith. You got some action in there, you got some fisticuffs, you got some shootouts. The production value of the Air Force One looks legit enough. Looks a bit too legit to quit. You even get some different types of action in the third act with the fighter plane stuff. Then not when there's bits of CG, it doesn't look the best nowadays. Granted, it is 1997. Hell, there's CGI in films nowadays that looks the same as this. And that I'm going to be more harsh on because you have almost 30 years to get better. But yeah, Air Force One is still a very solid film. It's still a really good Harrison Ford movie. That line, "Get off my plane," is fucking badass. I wish the fight with him and Gary Oldman was maybe a little bit longer, but still, with the circumstances, it's kind of hard to stand up and have a fist fight when you're ready to be blown out of a plane. So I get that. It's a good death for the villain. Badass line from Harrison Ford, and made you proud to be American, which I am. Air Force One, very good film. God, it wipes the taste of that shitty G20 film out of your mouth, man. Dude, that's a horrible movie. This is how you do it. Again, like I said, I would cut down a bit of the runtime, maybe a little bit less of the conference meetings with Glenn Close in them. Fixes CGI the effects up a bit here and there, but other than that, fairly good movie. So, with that said, I got now the music popping in my head. Like, this is movies. This is movie making. This is escapism. That you get you feeling that riled up and that adrenaline pumping. Not bullshit like Thunderbolts and fucking Captain America, Brave New shit, and all this other shit. But that's the films of today. That's another thing for another day. With that said, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.